Okay, I just want to take the time to chat with you about a little memory I have that relates to the Eastern Idaho's Burley Switcher. That is. I remember this one time when I was in the 12th grade, and this was before 2.5 years, like 2 years, 5 months before I got my YouTube channel. It was like April of 2009 that this memory occurred. I remember this one time. It was during the lunch break. Okay, so when I was on my lunch break during my senior year, I was outside. Okay, so that's when shortly after that, about 15 to 20, it wasn't maybe 10 minutes after going outside and leaving the high school cafeteria just to wait for third hour to start, I hear the Eastern Idaho's Burley Switcher coming into town out by that railroad crossing by Gosner's and the train bridge. And sure enough, it gets to Occidental about 18 minutes later. I had actually got to Occidental within 10 or 12 minutes after that. And so then once it got to Occidental, it did some switching. It switched some cars around and left some in the rail yard. And when it left with some some of those refrigerated box cars that say Cryotrans on it. And left with some covered hoppers that had barley in them. And then when it tugged away with those two types of with those two types of rail cars right there, it first went down to McCain's, and then it switched out it must have disconnected from it must have disconnected from the cars it already had. So and then after that, it went through the switch. The switch went through the switch, and then the Burley Switcher went through the switch into the McCain's yard, and then it gathered up all the cars that were ready for pickup in the McCain's rail yard, and then it came through the switch again, stopped, switch went through the switch, and then it went to couple up to the cars it disconnected from, that it uncoupled from, and pulled forward through the switch, stopped, threw the switch, went pushing the cars that were supposed to be delivered to McCain's, and then came through the switch, and it coupled up the cars it took out of the McCain's yard and coupled those cars up to the hoppers that were headed for the Coors Light beer elevators just 2 or 3 miles west of McCain's. And then it went through, it went backing up, disconnecting from those cars, and then coupled up to the cars it was going to deliver, and then went delivering each one onto a different track, and then once it was done with that, it came through the switch, the switchman threw the switch, the locomotive recoupled to the cars that left there on the main track, and starts taking off and heads to the Coors Light beer elevators, and then put the cars in the siding and took off, pulled some, it went, after it put its cars in the siding and went back on the main track to pick up the cars, the hoppers that the Coors Light elevators had wanted the Eastern Idaho to pick up. The Burley Switcher picked those up, and then I don't know what the deal was. They might have put them all on one track. They might have switched. They might have put them on like 2 or 3 different tracks, and then after that they coupled up to the refrigerated Cryotrans box cars. They put those in the siding somehow, and the hoppers that were set out for delivery to the Coors Light elevators had been delivered, and then that's when they coupled up to the refrigerated box cars, and then they couple up to the hoppers they had picked up and sorted out and left aside. And after all that switching right there, they had came back, and I swear that had taken like 10-15 minutes. Possibly, it took about 15 minutes, and then they were on their way back, and then I think they may or may not have made a delivery or pickup. They may or may not have picked up some loaded hoppers or delivered some empty hoppers to or from PV Grain. And if they didn't do any picking up or delivering there, my guess is they picked up some hoppers and headed out onto the. They might have picked up some hoppers, some covered hoppers, and and possibly some Boise Cascade box cars, and headed out onto the Oakley Spur. But anyways, thought I might take the time to share that experience with you.